Okay. All right. It's Chapo, Tuesday, July 5th. Hope everyone had a great 4th of July holiday, but a little housekeeping at the top of the show here. First off, a reminder that we have a upcoming show in Portland, Oregon at the Aladdin Theater on August 4th. Tickets available at chapotraphouse.com/live. We are also in the midst of an ongoing summer merchandise sale. Links to buy our merch. Also available at chapotraphouse.com. But before we get started on the show today, we have to dip into the rarely, if ever, accessed corrections department. On one of our more recent episodes, we speculated about whether the abortion pill misoprostol could show up in a blood test and be used to legally punish the taker. We don't often do that. Obviously, keep your corrections to yourselves. But when you are a doctor with a PhD knowledge in the subject at hand, especially of this importance, I will just read from the doctor in question and thank him for this correction. Could the hospital do a blood test and find misoprostol? Good question. And the answer is no. Misoprostol is quickly metabolized into misoprostol acid, which is rapidly removed from the blood. After taking a single 400 microgram dose, it is taken orally or placed under the tongue. The misoprostol acid is essentially gone by 120 minutes and by 350 minutes with vaginal administration. After 3 doses of 800 micrograms every 3 hours, it should be completely gone from the system within 12 hours after the last dose, if not sooner. So little knowledge from the medical field there. We were speculating on this, but we're in fact wrong. It will not show up in a blood test after at least an hour or two. So, that being said, dusted off all that business. Let's start the show. Gentlemen, how was your 4th of July weekend?
I still have all of my fingers, so only a moderate success.
I suppose, the holiday was a bit marred by several mass shootings that took place.
No, in this country, I don't believe it.
Felix, one of them in your backyard in Highland Park.
Two of them. I mean, there are honestly like 2 in Chicago. There's obviously the one where like people died, to my knowledge, is going to be the bigger one. And because Highland Park doesn't typically get shot up, but the exact same day, O Block, Parkway Gardens, actually closer physically to where I grew up, if not socioeconomically at all. There was a mass shooting there too. A fairly popular rapper on the Chicago drill scene was unfortunately hit. No one, to my knowledge, in that one has died, but I could be wrong about that. But yeah, there were 2 pretty big ones in the greater Chicagoland area.
And another one in Philadelphia. But, that to me is still not clear if there was a shooting or whether people were just reacting to fireworks because they thought that, basically mass shootings have turned us all into golden retrievers or traumatized vets every time the July 4th rolls around.
Hiding under the coffee table.
Sort of, loud outdoor setting with fireworks is like going to be a dicey proposition now, given how on edge everyone is. But yes. I don't want to belabor the mass shooting report too long, but the fact that basically an emo SoundCloud rapper just killed 6 people is. What do you even say about it? It's just like I don't know how this speaks to the evolution of these sorts of atrocities, but like, good God,
hasn't that always kind of been what it's been? Ever since it shifted in America. Like in America, mass shootings used to be you go into your office and you kill all your fucking coworkers because you got fired or something, and like 3 other things have gone wrong. Like the average age of the mass shooter seems to have like slid down, and then it just whoever has done it for the past like about 30 years, give or take, they are the equivalent of an emo SoundCloud rapper for their time, right? Because it's like, and there are tons of exceptions to this just because of how frequently they happen and how many people live here. But it's usually like a disaffected, like 18 or 19-year-old, like white male who gone insane and has easy access to weapons, right?
Yeah.
It just seems like this one is literally living up to the stereotype, though, of like kind of Pepe vaporwave emo SoundCloud rapper shooting up a 4th of July parade and killing 6 people. It's the losers jihad, and it's just
it's a revolt of failed influencers. It's like the end of Day of the Locust, basically, with assault rifles.
Well, like the thing now, because like no one thinks these can stop, really. Like people who get like now it's happening where like the people who get shot and like survive and see their friends die are young enough that they're like they don't remember a time where you don't document everything. So they're like immediately after they get shot, they're like, yeah, I got fucking shot. This sucks, and nothing's gonna change. That no one has any expectations for it. Whether it's like Republicans who, they have some like harebrained idea where it's like, oh, we're gonna put 2 turnkeys on a door and put a one of the guys who did a massacre in Fallujah in front of it with a grenade launcher, or it's like Democrats. No one really thinks it's going to stop, especially not the people who are victims of it now, which is a pretty depressing commentary. But the only consolation that we have is like trying to stick the shooter on whoever.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes you can be like, okay, this was like a MAGA guy. Sometimes they're like a vague, you can assign some like vague left quality. Like there's the Dayton guy. But they usually do fit one consistent profile, which is like an incredibly like mentally ill, socially disaffected person,
I mean, like, well, I guess this is getting into where I'd like to head for today's show, which is basically like I'd like to examine how the consent manufacturing factory is attempting to deal with the reality of which, like, basically everyone knows, whether it comes to like the insane violence caused by guns or the new reality of abortion being criminalized and probably contraception and gay rights soon to follow after that. That, like, the country is changing in ways that most people think is for the worse, but that like everyone has pretty much resigned or has basically like abetting the fact that no one's going to do anything about it, and we just have to like get used to it. And I want to open with this CNN article that's just a look inside the Biden White House right now, and it's a headline here. After a string of Supreme Court setbacks, Democrats wonder whether Biden White House is capable of urgency moment demands. It begins with Deborah Messing was fed up. Yes, that's Deborah Messing of Will and Grace and Twitter fame.
While all this terrible stuff has been happening, I have only been thinking nonstop, how is Debbie Messing holding up? I need to know. I'm really glad they finally let me. I can relax now that I'm aware what's going on with Debbie.
Hey, when you're all out of grace, all you got left is Will.
Well, I do my best. So it says Deborah Messing was fed up. The former Will and Grace star was among dozens of celebrity Democratic supporters and activists who joined a call with the White House last Monday to discuss the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. Okay, just like first paragraph of the thing. Why were they having this conference call with fucking Deborah Messing and other celebrities? Like, why was she even on the fucking call? Why are they talking to like governors and fucking senators about this shit?
That's their actual constituency. That's what they care about. Where's Jen Psaki right now? Who's she hanging out with?
Yeah, I mean, if you really put a gun to my head, like, what is the reason beyond her just being like the true constituency, like the person the Democrats are performing for the most? I would say that there is probably like an incredibly stupid plan to replace Kamala with her. It'd be like, what are you talking about? There is no Kamala Harris. This is a Mandela effect.
We
Vice
did it,
President's
Will.
always
It was
been
always Debbie
Messing.
Messing. She was always the vice president.
But
what are you talking about?
she's also half Indian and half Jewish. So we're still like doing that. But no, there's never been a woman named Kamala Harris who dated Montel Williams. She's never existed. She's never done a weird laugh or look frightened by a grill. These are all deep fakes. It's always been Deborah Messing.
Actually, Will and Grace referred to Willie Brown, former mayor of San Francisco, who Deborah Messing dated.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so I'm sure the White House has had other calls with, people who aren't, former sitcom actors. But it says here, the mood was fatalistic, according to 3 people on the call, which was co-organized by the advocacy group Build Back Better Together. Build Back Better Together. But this next paragraph may come as a shock if you're familiar with Deborah Messing's sort of online personality. But it says here, Messing said she'd gotten Joe Biden elected and wanted to know why she was being asked to do anything at all, yelling that there didn't even seem to be a point to voting. Others wondered why the call was happening. So, I mean, Deborah Messing has come around to, I mean, like, I think Susan Sarandon would like her apology now, Deborah. But I mean, Deborah has come around to the, like, why the fuck we did vote for you. We did everything, like, and so why are you asking us for anything when you're saying, like, you're now getting on the emergency action call to deal with Roe v. Wade being overturned, and it's Joe Brandon and the Build Back Better Together fucking advocacy group being like, okay, Deborah Messing, what do you got for us?
What do you got?
What are you going to do?
We need something.
Debbie, we need action from you now.
I have an idea. Fight Song 2. New music video, new celebs mouthing the same song, but maybe like openly weeping while they do so or something to make the gravity of the situation more clear.
Get the Stranger Things kids in on it. They weren't missing from the last time. We need because the youth vote is essential. And apparently young people really don't like Joe Brandon.
Yeah, the kids are finished with Brandon.
Yeah, get the kids, get some Demogorgons in there. We got to get Stranger Things, Build Back Better Together with them. But so again, the mood on the call among Biden's basically the Biden Sadukar is, I mean, even they're looking grim. They're looking at the God Emperor going, come on, man, you want us to go to Arrakis? What the fuck? I mean, just after all the shit we've done for you, I mean, fucking, we killed Duke Leto and his family, and now you're asking us to vote? What the fuck?
Everyone is Lorenz Tate at the end of Dead Presidents, throwing the chair at Martin Sheen. All the shit I did for this motherfucking country. Do you agree with Deborah Messing that she got Biden elected?
Absolutely.
Yes, I do.
I agree.
It was all her.
Yeah. Deborah Messing and the cohort of people that she represents was certainly that was the Biden Sadukar. Those are the people that were most fucking dedicated and probably worked the hardest to not just vote, but do everything else to elect Joe Biden. By that I mean could harangue other people to vote for Joe Biden. But the call not going great. But it says here, so it says Deborah's yelling and openly wondering why the call is happening and if there's even a point to voting at all. The article goes on to say that afternoon, participants received a follow-up email with a list of basic talking points and suggestions of Biden's speech clips to share on TikTok.
That'll do it. I think. I think that'll do it. I think a clip of Joe Biden wearing like a cap and a scarf and goggles and driving around in a Duesenberg and saying something like a woman's choice is a thing that she's got to choose, and no one wants to have an abortion, but you got to think that if you're going to have a baby, that's a choice, and it's a person, but it's a choice. And thank you.
It's funny. I mean, like it mentions like like on the action list, actionable items. Here's a list of TikTok links that you can share on social media of Biden looking smart and in charge. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but have you seen TikTok being blamed a lot recently for why young people don't like Joe Biden?
Yeah, no, they're doing this a lot. They did this with military recruiting too. They're blaming TikTok for like the shortfall in military recruiting. They're blaming it for a lot.
Yeah, because troops are on TikTok showing what being in the military is actually like, or just being like, this sucks. But I mean, like, I've seen a lot of commentary from people being like, TikTok is brainwashing young people into hating Joe Biden because, like, it's just, short context-free clips of him looking like a doddering buffoon or, TikTok clips attacking him or, like, propagandizing the youth into being now, I think 70% disapproval rating for Joe Brandon among people under the age of 30. But like by 60 or 70%, they still want Democrats in control of the country, but they just hate Joe Brandon. And that he's become like a punchline, like he's become a stand-in for everything like ineffectual and just fucking incompetent about like the country we live in now. And a lot of people are blaming TikTok for that. So the way to counter that, better TikToks, more TikToks, positive, Brandon affirming TikToks instead of Brandon defaming TikToks.
What if we set one of those clips where he just fucking glitches out for 30 seconds? To one of those cool robot sounds that they like to use on there. That'll be fun.
Remembering my childhood in 1943. I think I why am I giving the White House advice? Why, what would they even do with it, right? But what is the new thing for young people? And by young people, I mean everything from actual young people to millennials who are now in their 50s. It's to go online, be the most terrified person ever, never do anything, never confront anyone, just accept any disrespect that comes your way and be like, oh, I'm unhinged. I'm mentally ill. I'm crazy. I'm unmedicated. I'm scary. I'm a schizo. Everyone has this. You know who's really unhinged in his chaos era is the man who doesn't know where he is and has given like $70 billion to an army that's losing like 1,000 people an hour. Pretty unhinged.
Just like, dropping billions of dollars in small arms and fucking shoulder fired rockets with not even like checking where they're going. It's fine. They'll be all right.
Yeah. No, yeah.
That's chaos energy.
Yeah. I think that they should. What's the thing they do now where it's like it's the vacant stare? That's like the new thing for like women influencers. But Joe certainly has that.
Oh, he has got it.
He's succubus maxing.
Yeah. The feminine urge, man, to take your Adderall and your iced coffee and get railed in a Madewell dress in your unhinged era.
Just another few details from this CNN article. It says here, the call with Deborah Messing, 3 days after the decision eliminating federal abortion rights, encapsulates the overwhelming sense of frustration among Democrats with Biden. Okay, this call was 3 days after this shit already happened. Like, were there any calls with celebrities like within the month leading up to, like, when they were like, everybody knew this was going to happen?
Nope. They were still shocked. They didn't think it was going to be released the day it was, and they were all like getting coffee enemas or something.
Yeah, listen to this. It says, more than a week after the abortion decision, top Biden aides are still wrangling over releasing new actions in response, despite the draft decision leaking 6 weeks earlier. White House counsel Dana Remus had assured senior aides the Supreme Court wouldn't rule on abortion that day. A White House press aide assigned to the issue was walking to get coffee when the alert hit. Several Democratic leaders privately mocked how the president stood in the foyer of the White House, squinting through his remarks from a teleprompter as demonstrators poured into the streets, making only vague promises of action because he and his aides hadn't decided on more. Then, Biden's July 1st meeting with governors to talk about their efforts to protect abortion rights was planned so last minute that none of those who attended came in person, and several of those invited declined to rearrange their schedules to appear virtually. God damn, this is like when us scheduling a business meeting. This is worse than our shit. Like, Zoom's not working for me right now. What are we gonna?
Yeah.
Can we reschedule? Can I call back?
Biden's like, I have my AirPods in. He's swallowed one.
Remember, these were the guys who you had to elect because they were the adults in the room with the experience to actually govern. That was funny.
Just a little bit. It says here, multiple Democratic politicians who have reached out to work with Biden, whether it's on specific bills, brainstorming, or outreach, often don't hear anything back at all. Potential appointees have languished for months waiting to hear if they'll get jobs or when they'll be done with vetting. Invitations to events are scarce. Thank you calls barely happen. Okay, it's the thank you calls. That really calls me. That grinds my gears. You got to send a thank you note.
Come on,
thank
man.
You call. You got to do it. Come on, man.
It's amazing coming from Biden too, because like all that glad handing, backslapping bullshit is how he made it to the top. I mean, he's a total himbo and always was, but he was great at that retail politicking. And now even that has deserted him. He's just this turd floating on the top of a fucking swimming pool.
All right, so that's that's a sort of a keyhole glimpse into what's going on behind the scenes, or rather, what's not going on behind the scenes at the highest levels of executive authority in this country right now. As shit just continues to spiral out of control, and like we confront these like horrific and intractable problems that are only getting worse, whether it be guns, or whether it being like the specter of abortion being criminalized and women suffering, dying, or being put in jail as a result of that. And just like on that angle, like for the rest of the show, I'd like to examine, like I said, what's going on over at the consent manufacturing factory this past week, because I think looking at the paper of record, the New York Times, and how they have reacted to this situation, I think is very telling. Now, sure. Like, it's not like I'm sure they have editorialized that the end of Roe versus Wade is a bad thing. And I'm sure they have, featured articles or op-ed pieces from people, bemoaning this lack of this loss of our fundamental rights here. And I'm sure they've demanded better gun control, regulations or laws. I'm sure they've advocated for all these things. But as we've talked about for the last 3 or 4 episodes on this show, I think like at a certain level, everybody understands that there's nothing they can do, or if there are the things that they can do are like outside the realm of what can be considered acceptable, and like still have a functioning New York Times as a paper, and like the government that they cover and have to like sort of bolster the legitimacy of would become untenable. So it's just a number of articles this week in the New York Times, specifically on the abortion issue, has chosen instead to, I think, like, I think it's really telling about like the gravity of where they are trying to sort of finesse the opinion of their like overwhelmingly liberal readership, and that is to basically accept what is happening and to realize that sort of like that it's not so bad, and that now that more or less complete rule by a moral minority of opinion is actually the fault of the people who are opposed to this particular minority. That it's time to be nicer to them, and it's time to understand them. And I think a good example of that, and like I don't need to go into this whole article, but the Pamela Paul op-ed. Pamela Paul is now the head of the op-ed page. She used to be the head of the book review. She is married to Bret Stephens, and look, she's every bit as boring as her husband. So I don't need to read this article. Essentially, the Pamela Paul's article is about how like the left and right have come together to agree on one thing, like women shut up. And she spends the first paragraph of the article talking about abortion being criminalized. Then she spends the next 8 paragraphs making a moral equivalence between the criminalization of abortion and what the extreme right wing and their stranglehold over the judiciary is about to do to women in this country, and essentially like pronouns and trans people. And like saying that both are equally a threat to women. And I think what's going on here is that what they're offering women in the face of the fact that their rights are being taken away from them, and they're being taken away from them by a system that the New York Times is complicit in supporting, is not to demand or ask anyone to fight for those rights or to resist this, but what they're giving them instead is trans people to shit on, and like to point to them as the reason for why this is happening. Rather than at anyone with actual power, they're going to basically give permission to, I think, a large swath of their liberal readership to blame, trans women and trans people like as a whole for their loss of rights, and gay people too. Like they're going to point to trans people as like, oh, okay, like they're the ones that have gone too far and they have provoked this backlash. And like I said, I think it's this like using their authority to give permission to people to like and cajole them not to get angry at the Supreme Court or our political system, or like I said, the moral minority that is now using the force of law to impose their views on the rest of the country, but to blame it on and attack a particularly vulnerable and small minority group.
I mean, like, it doesn't matter if people are like Gen Xers or Boomers. The only thing that a lot of people remember, regardless of whether they lived through it or not, is George McGovern. So, like, their take on this, the past few years, all they're seeing is like, oh no, we need to do Bill Clinton again. We need to do exactly 1992 because we're in the exact same conditions. And instead of having like a sister soldier moment, and yeah, we can also have one of those. We're going to do this.
I mean, it's got to be the blame has to go somewhere away and down. It can't go up, because that has implications that no one at the New York Times and nobody who really reads the New York Times is interested in confronting. So, I mean, and people say like this stuff is used by like hate mongers to justify, and it's like to an extent that's true, but like the real goal of this is just to give you a narrative, as you're saying, of blame that allows you to just continue not doing anything because there's nothing to do. Like you see it with the Democrats all the way up to the top, like just that article we were talking about. I actually want to go back and read the last line in that Biden article, if I can find it.
Okay, last paragraph is beginning with the country didn't elect Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Biden has been batting away complaints that he's out of sync with his party since before he launched his presidential campaign. The country didn't elect Joe Biden because they wanted a Democratic Donald Trump to go out there every day and divide the country more, said Cedric Richmond, who left his own seat in Congress to serve in the West Wing for Biden's first year. Democrats attacking Biden are scapegoating the president, or distracted and not focusing on what they should be focused on. He saved democracy once by beating a tyrant. He's doing it again, but he doesn't do it by beating his chest. The attacks Biden is facing now are the same foolishness that got us Donald Trump. Hillary wasn't good enough. She's not fighting hard enough, Richmond said. That's what got us Donald Trump. That got us Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. Case closed.
Case closed. This is what they tell themselves, that people who are outside of power, who can only act individually as voters or citizens, are responsible for the outcomes that they are, from the center, supposed to be directing. And if that's the case, there's nothing you can do. So accepting things becomes the only rational choice. But to do that, you have to have a narrative that is self-absolving.
And also, like, I think it's more evil than that, because, like, yeah, you have to have a narrative that absolves everyone who, created the situation we're currently living in, and deflect anger away from them or anyone in power. But also, you need a scapegoat. You need people to blame. And like I said, with the Pamela Paul article, it is very clear that, like, what they're giving, women who, you read the New York Times, or liberal women who regard themselves as feminists, when confronted with, like, what do we do about this fundamental loss of our rights, is to be like, well, it's trans women who did this to us, because they went too far and they provoked this reaction. It's like everything is always about, like, oh, like the right wing, they wouldn't have gone as far as they're going now had it not been for these things that even we're uncomfortable with, and we can now fixate on that, rather than, like, let's say, encouraging our readers to resist these unjust laws, or fight them, and fight the people who are fucking doing it to you. And, like, it's not just a Pamela Paul article. I'll also point to, I don't know if you guys saw or not, there was a news article that was essentially a profile of like young women under the age of 30 who are part of the pro-life movement. And, like, the article does mention that, like, among that cohort of women under the age of 30 in this country, support for abortion rights is as high as it's ever been. And I'm talking in, like, the 80 or above percentile. So, but, like, I'm not saying it's, like, totally inappropriate to write an article that attempts to explain the mindset of these people, but the choice in focusing on this tiny minority of opinion within the broader anti-abortion movement to make it seem like, actually, a lot of young women are are okay with abortion now being criminalized, and let's hear what they have to say, rather than speaking to the 80% of women or young women in this country who are terrified by this, and disgusted by it, and want some sort of political leadership to fight the people who are doing it. It's just a question of, like, how you dole out sympathy here. Is the sympathy for the women who are now finding themselves just completely bereft of any access to reproductive health care? Or is it like do they and their fears need to be spoken to and understood? Or do we focus on, like, these, like, a 20-year-old Catholic college students who are just like, yeah, I can't wait to support babies, or I can't wait for our country now to, like, truly show love to mothers and their children.
Going back to the the first type of op-ed, I mean, I guess this is, like, infected everyone now, because, like, well, what else can you do? What else can you do but, like, pin all your woes on somebody else who usually probably did not cause them? But, like, okay, the thing with, like, birthing people and that shit, there was such, like, an incredible backlash to that with, like, NGOs, that, like, I haven't even really, like, seen it recently. Like, maybe, like, a couple times this year. And I agree, it's, like, like, annoying and stupid, but, like, no one is, whether they are, like, just a person online or, yeah, like, an op-ed, no one can ever just be annoyed by something anymore. It has to have, like, a moral invective behind it, because no consumption is free from political action. It can't just, like, be annoying and heavy-handed. It's, like, it's the reason for every bad thing that's happening.
Yeah, Felix, I mean, to your point here, like, the Pamela Paul article, like I said, it spends the first two paragraphs just dispensing with the reality that, like, the right wing of, like, our political system in this country has just, is now basically declared open season on women everywhere in this country. Then spends the next 8 paragraphs attempting to make a moral equivalence between that and the idea of a 10-year-old not being able to get abortion after being raped is on, like, the same, like, is the same level of assault on women and their rights and dignity as saying pregnant people. And the thing is, yeah, Do I think that sort of like inclusive language like that gets a little dopey at times? Yeah, I do. But I don't think the people who prefer that kind of language are in any way, shape, or form a threat to women at all, much let alone a moral equivalence to the idea of women dying from an ectopic pregnancy that could easily be prevented. Or this idea, like she goes on to talk about like J.K. Rowling and TERFs, that like calling a woman a TERF or disagreeing with like TERF ideology is like calling a woman the N-word or something like that. Like this is the same level of assault on like the dignity and humanity of women as what, like I said, like the right wing who has actual power in this country, like what they are doing. And yes, like academia and like like dopey fucking like Twitter people, like like they are annoying sometimes, but like. It's like really none of your business one way or the other. And like, how much does it really affect your life or personhood in the same way that like this legal regime that like removes you of your basic rights does?
Well, I mean, everyone's in their own, mind palace, right? All the people that like voted in like the Virginia state legislature elections or the Virginia House of Delegates were like, I'm sick of how people are treating J.K. Rowling. It reminds me of like what people do with shooters now, where it's like they'll see like a clearly like photoshopped image, like a clear like fake post, where it's like the shooter being like, I'm a leftist and I'm a federal agent, and they'll be like, oh my god, I'm the only one who can see this. I've cracked the case. The most online generation in history, and they cannot spot a fake to save their fucking lives because they don't want to. Everyone wants to live in their own created reality, where the sole thing they care about is the only thing that's happening. Every event goes through that.
And along these lines, I did want to look briefly at what I thought was the most insane of these New York Times opinion essays along this front. I don't know if you guys saw this one. It's the one by this woman called Leah Librasco Sargent. Headline: In a post-Roe world, we can avoid pitting mothers against babies. And essentially, the point of this article is that she and her partner traveled to a Catholic hospital in New Jersey to terminate her ectopic pregnancy, but in her mind, that's not an abortion. And
tell it to the judge, lady.
Yeah. So I mean, like, let's just read a little bit here. It says, from a pro-life perspective, delivering a baby who is ectopic is closer to delivering a baby very prematurely because the mother has life-threatening eclampsia. A baby delivered at 22 weeks may or may not survive. A baby delivered in the first trimester because of an ectopic pregnancy definitely won't survive. But in both cases, a pro-life doctor sees herself as delivering a child who is as much a patient as the mother. A pro-life approach to ectopic pregnancy may countenance similar procedures, but still sees it as different from an approach that equates to an abortion. When a mother's life is threatened by the course of her pregnancy, there is a wide gulf between a culture that assumes she and her baby are pitted against each other and one in which both are valued. I mean, like, say what you will, but like in that situation, like they are pitted against you. Well, actually, no one's pitted at anyone at that point because it's not a baby. It's like it's dead. Like there's no chance of it ever being born or its life being saved. And it is, and like whatever that is, clump of cells or a fucking infant that you want to put out, it is very much pitted against your life, and a decision needs to be made. And the thing is, she made the decision that anyone would, but is now claiming for herself this idea that like, oh, it's actually I didn't get an abortion. Even though like the procedure that she underwent was exactly the same thing as everyone else gets in that situation, and is now being denied women in her position all over this country.
Well, what she wants is just like basically a concierge service to give her a like an elevated abortion experience with essentially just the trappings of a delivery, so that she can personally like resolve the cognitive dissonance of being confronted with something that in her mind is like not a legitimate medical procedure. Now she knows it is, so she has to, time to just build a new justification edifice around this fact, because as Felix said, you get to do your own bespoke reality now. If you want it to be actually this isn't an abortion, it's a pregnancy plus, then what are you going to do? No one's going to stop you, and somebody is going to be there who wants to have the same fantasy, and they're going to sign on.
Yeah, this is also the official country of mine is different.
Yes,
mine doesn't count.
And also, like, however she justifies this by saying that, like, we went to a Catholic doctor who delivered this ectopic pregnancy as if it were alive, even though it was dead, and used the exact same procedure as what is considered an abortion. Like in my head, like this now we don't have to pit mothers and babies against each other. It's like whatever's in your head doesn't matter, lady.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter for the women in Texas or elsewhere who now have to be flown across state lines to have their lives saved. And it won't fucking help you if you lived in a different
sort
state.
of nuance that she's insisting upon is not possible in a legal regime, because it's about drawing bright lines and imposing penalties, which stops people from doing things.
She says here, the specifications for surgery remain the same, whether the surgeon is pro-life or not, whether the mother kept repeating baby to her nurses or stuck to saying pregnancy. But I wonder if an observer in the operating room could have seen the difference. If my surgeon was visibly more tender as he worked, knowing he could be the first person to see our child, a child who would not ever see us. Doctors can't value women more by dismissing our babies as worth less. Even women who support abortion access may find it jarring to have their child's life dismissed when they hope they would hold this baby. It's better to be honest about tragedy and loss than to pretend that only one person is on the table.
So, I mean, the thing that's unspoken here is that at an abortion, like the doctor just like, he comes in and he puts a cigarette butt out in your fucking navel and then says, all right, let's scrape this fucker out. Is that what the assumption here?
Yeah.
That like they do it wrong because they don't value the baby. Like she's talking, the thing she's imagining, I cannot believe actually exists anywhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you ever wanted proof that American Catholics are Protestants, I mean,
yes,
they've moved predestination up now, where it's actually every event of your life.
Yeah,
they can look outwardly the same, but if you're a bad person, when you get an abortion, your doctor is Jamie Kennedy from the Roe v. Wade movie, and he sticks his hook nose up your cunt and
I can make
brains the baby with his Shylock nose. And then puts a $100 bill in your asshole and gets change for it. Just like out of your urethra, like a Coinstar. But if you're like a good person, if you're religious, if you're Catholic, you go in there and you're like, hey, I want my assuredly dead baby delivered, and the doctor is like, absolutely, and you feel no pain, and it comes out, and he's alive. But then he's needed in heaven. And what you just got was not an abortion. It was just like God needed him. God needed that baby to be alive for like 4 seconds before
in
he
this
came
case,
out.
the baby was never alive. It did not take a breath. It did not die. It was already dead. And look, I'm happy this woman was able to avail herself of medical treatment that comported with her whatever religious beliefs that she may have. But the thing is, like, necessarily, if we as a society are going to begin catering to those religious beliefs at the expense of everyone else, it doesn't fucking matter. And I don't really care. And also, it's just like, back to my original point, like, why the paper of record in this moment in time, at this like fundamental like rupture in American history and culture, do they feel the need to hold up people like this as essentially like sympathetic or voices worthy of being included in this debate at the expense of the reality of like not just the majority of opinion in this country, but what I would think like any reasonable person would fucking rate like the severity of like the kind of like the scales of what's at stake here. And I'm just going to read one more thing here. She says, speaking of sort of the boutique abortion experience that she's hoping to have, she writes, I knew that the Trappist monks of New Melleray Abbey would send us a tiny coffin free of charge as part of their ministry to bereaved parents. My husband knew that if anything went wrong, I wanted him to order an adult-sized one for me. We didn't get to bury our baby, and my husband didn't have to bury me. One surgeon had been right. Our baby died some time ago, and all he could find was the placenta. But while I recovered at home, we had something to know our baby by. We named this child Chameleon after St. Camillus de Lellis. He was a 16th century gambler who was treated so poorly by his doctors that he founded a nursing order and ultimately became a priest and saint.
No, they named their kid after Chameleon Air. Come on.
Yeah.
We know you like that song.
It's just like there's like the anger that is being given voice to is like, okay, if you're angry about it, the only people like seemingly that are being allowed to express their anger are the anger of people like Pamela Paul and J.K. Rowling. and it's anger directed at trans people, not at fucking right-wing Supreme Court justices and the politicians that enable them. And it's just like, okay, if there's sympathy to be made out here, if there's people's lived experiences that need understanding, I'm sorry, it's this daffy fucking broad who's just like created some carve out in her head for her fucking religious beliefs that she is choosing now to take away from everyone else. And that somehow that's worthy of fucking is crediting morally as a point of view.
Yeah, I mean, it's about validating your own fantasy world by invalidating what you imagine somebody else's world as. You know, like you have to accept my head canon. That's basically what we're in now, a battle of.
Well, it's saying like whose headcanon counts and whose doesn't.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's pretty clear what the choice has now been made by.
Well,
like I mean,
it's not really a choice though, is it? Like,
Times.
Who else's headcanon is going to count? People with money and power and influence, or people without? Like, that's not really a contest. It's like the water finds its own level. There's no other choice they can make. You know, it speaks to the institutional realities and structures that govern like content at that level.
I just think, I mean, I like just these examples I've been talking about. I just think it's very clear that, like, you know, the establishment media, the consent manufacturers are very clearly have decided, as you know, maybe rightly so, that there's nothing they can do about this, or like there's no going back now. So rather than encourage people to resist this, I think they're very clearly choosing to cultivate a sense of sympathy with the people who are doing who are inflicting this evil on the rest of us. Is that, you know, we should be encouraged to see things from their point of view rather than our own, or to fight them at all. We should just understand. We should be more understanding of them rather than seek to resist them in any way. Now, I know that's a bit heavy, but I'd like to do one more. I'd like to close out the episode with one more New York Times article that is a little bit a view from the lighter side of things, but that very much fits in the wheelhouse that I've just been talking about. This is my favorite kind of New York Times article, and this is where you send a staff reporter to cover the worst dinner party in the world and report back to readers on it. So would you guys like to visit? Would you guys like to take a jaunty trip to Princeton, New Jersey, to sit down at a dinner table with the most insufferable people in the world?
I don't want to do that.
No.
Why would I ever give a shit? Why would it ever matter to me who is having dinner parties at Princeton? That's an insane thing to assume anyone would be interested in.
You know, we don't want to go there, but we're going to go there anyway.
Okay,
we have
so
to.
That's what we're here for. We got to do it.
We must bear witness to the dinner party of Solveig Gold, who is proud to be the wife of a canceled Princeton professor. Now, the one thing I was impressed in this article is the way Miss Gold's cans look in that sundress. Awooga. Yes, ma'am. I'm paying attention now. Solveig Lucia Gold was setting the table in her backyard next door to the house once occupied by Albert Einstein. Her yard is a sweeping field of emerald green grass leading down to an 18th century blacksmith's cottage with stone floors that houses her home study. Ms. Gold, 27, was preparing for an intimate dinner with some of the few people, our little cabal, she said, who publicly admit being on friendly terms with her and her husband, the recently fired, she prefers canceled, former Princeton classics professor Joshua Katz. Most of the guests were much older than Ms. Gold. This included Dr. Katz, who was 52 and was once her professor. They married last July, 4 years after she finished Princeton with a summa cum laude degree in classics, and 1 year after Dr. Katz began his public flight with the campus left. The couple ran arms wide open into the culture wars, which Ms. Gold says was characteristic of her, but not of him, the low-key professor whom everyone liked, who previously didn't ruffle feathers at the university where he had worked since 1998. I am the alpha, she wrote in the essay about their relationship. I'm not Lady Macbeth in this story, but I am obviously implicated in some way in getting him involved, she said. She gave me a certain kind of courage for doing this type of thing, Dr. Katz said.
I'm kind of stunned that Dr. Katz went out of private practice and back to academia. He had a thriving every comic
Talk
in New
therapy.
York.
Yeah,
they were all there. They were doing amazing bits, and he's going to just go to fucking Princeton from there.
I mean, what
guess
happened
if
to
you
his
get
son,
access
though?
to some like academic Laura Linton's, which is what I'm getting the energy I'm getting here is I'm sorry, Louise Linton.
Yeah,
that's it, right? Seth
yeah,
Mnuchin's wife.
Yeah, Mnuchin's
I'm feeling
wife.
This is like the academic version of her.
Do you think Dr. Katz's son would have been a mass shooter?
Oh God,
No, not at all.
that's
I was
very
kind
sad.
of-
Ben was a
tough.
wonderful son and man.
Ben was a wonderful son in the 90s. Ben in the 2020s with the internet,
Yeah.
he's probably getting ready to do a shooting. He's probably going to live stream it. I'm not.
But
I'm
like
sorry.
it's like what is Ray Romano and Dom Irera going to do now that their doctor has become a classics professor and they can't they can't sort
They're
of
never
share
going to find out what the deal is with airplane peanuts now. They were so close to cracking it.
It's funny though. There is a photo of Dr. Katz in this article, and someone pointed out to me that he looks very similar to Tom Cruise in Tropic Thunder. But it says here, the trouble began on July 4th, 2020, when a group of Princeton faculty sent a letter to the university's president demanding that the university combat institutional racism. Anti-blackness is foundational to America, it declared. 4 days later, Dr. Katz responded with a manifesto, a declaration of independence by a Princeton professor in Quillette, which is something of a house organ for the so-called intellectual dark web. He took issue with the proposed changes that would lead to civil war on campus and erode even further public confidence in how elite institutions of higher education operate.
Everyone
blah, blah,
is
blah.
acting awesome here. I love everyone here because it's like, yeah, you have one side that's like, we need to decolonialize the hedge fund that's also a CIA recruitment station.
Yeah.
And then the other guy who's like, oh, so you want to put a burning tire around my neck, ANC style. Everyone, this is how everyone acts.
Everybody
awesome.
definitely understanding the stakes of the moment and what's important.
Yeah.
Outrage ensued over Dr. Katz's choice of words, which he defended as metaphorical. Nearly 2 years later, this spring fired Dr. Katz, who had tenure, saying that it was not for his outspokenness, but for new information that had emerged about his conduct during a sexual relationship he'd had with a student some 15 years earlier, an affair he had been suspended over before. Ms. Gold says that she has often been the only one standing between her husband and utter despair as his career crumbled and colleagues deserted him. A certain amount of prurient interest accompanied the revelation that the Princeton professor who'd lost his job over a relationship with one student was now married to another. Ms. Gold doesn't shy away from it. On her Twitter account, her avatar is a photo of herself in a wedding dress, and the background picture is of her with a group of Princeton professors, including her husband. This lady likes college way too much.
These college addicts need to be dealt with. Okay, we need I'm against mandatory. One thing Biden loves is the idea of don't throw drug users in jail. Make them go to mandatory treatment, which is like there's no distinction there. But I'm absolutely in favor mandatory at gunpoint therapy for college addicts. If you are more than like 2 years out of college and you still have any opinions about anything going on in your old school or any other one, you have to be have your brain fixed because it is terrible for everyone involved.
Yeah, this is like if Van Wilder was only doing the shitty parts of college. It's like he's like an 11-year sophomore, but he's like, yeah, I can never leave this place. I'm going to go to the Hillel meeting and argue about divestment.
Hey guys, I'm going to proctor an exam. Rolls into a fucking faculty budget meeting in a golf cart.
When Dr. Katz lost his job, Ms. Gold promptly published an essay about their relationship in Common Sense, the newsletter run by Barry Rice, a former writer and editor of the opinion department at the New York Times. My alma mater is not the school I once loved, went part of the headline, but Joshua Katz is exactly the man I knew I married. He's young at heart, and I'm an old soul, so it works, Ms. Gold later said. Usually it's the guy saying shit like that to the woman who's 30 years younger than him. You're an old soul, but here she knows the thing. She knows what to say. Is what I'm saying.
I mean, okay,
she knows how to hit her marks.
Don't agree with her. Don't like her lifestyle of never leaving college. Just going to say that right now. But fair is fair. Standing by her man, I think that's pretty admirable. It's pretty admirable how she, before he can even say it, she's like, wait, I'm basically older than him in soul. I like her.
I mean, like I said, I respect any woman who's willing to be in a relationship that widely weighted in it, or that widely imbalanced in terms of attractiveness. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you can be attracted to someone's mind, to the mind of the ancients, the classics, like Hesiod and Plato.
Yeah.
She set the long rectangular table in the grass precisely with a Wedgwood blue and white tablecloth. cloth napkins tied up in a yellow ribbons, place cards inked in neat cursive hand, and melamine dishes in a Provençal design. She was schooled in formal manners from a young age, she said, as the only child to an actress and a soap opera writer. My mom threw a lot of dinner parties, and I ended up talking to adults, Ms. Gold said. Okay, all right, the pieces begin to fall in place here. This is like a common sense Princeton. These are all just like halfway homes. And now the New York Times are halfway homes for kids who were only friends with adults throughout their childhood and were patted on the head and told how intelligent they were by their parents' dinner party guests. And that's
okay. You know what? They have some good traits too. You don't have to. Come on.
Yeah, that'd be the sequel
let's be understanding of child dorks. Okay, some of us were them.
The sequel to Leon the Professional. It's like Natalie Portman just writing articles. Why it's like fine to be friends with a 40-year-old man.
Who's on the email thread condemning my husband? Everyone. Wait, who? Everyone! She says, most of my boyfriends were conservative. They were all pot-smoking Republicans, she told her dinner guests later that night. That is, okay.
Worst of both worlds.
Solveig, you crazy for this one. Pot-smoking Republicans? Those are all your boyfriends? What a heterodox and contrarian personality this lady is.
Good Lord.
Solveig, pronounced Solveig, okay, sorry, has received a lot of favorable male attention, said her best friend from Princeton. Okay, so this is just like, I gotta say, Solveig probably just has like a PR agent who's like, can we get the New York Times to write an article about how hot I am and how smart and cool and dangerous I am? And also include in a news article like every single detail about the Provençal plates and neatly tied off tablecloths that I'm providing here to the cabal of canceled professors. Skipping ahead here, it says, on the night of the dinner, the couple had just returned from a brief decompression trip to Amsterdam and Cambridge, England, where Ms. Gold is completing her PhD in classics. She just submitted her dissertation tracing the metaphorical language of slavery across the Platonic corpus. In her introduction, she writes, the very use of slavery as a metaphor may be hideous to many. Although the enduring popularity of Britney Spears' 2001 hit song, I'm a Slave for You, suggests that the metaphor has survived somewhat unscathed. She relishes that it's a hot-button topic, but fears that the woke people in classics won't read it because it's by me. Okay, this is a terminal case of college addiction here. That is the opening paragraph for a master's dissertation on classics, and there's like, oh,
what's so funny is there are people who are obsessed with the idea that wokeness has degraded some sort of scholarly rigor in the academy, and this is the alternative to the woke garbage, which is mostly tedious crap. And but this is the other thing you get: tedious crap. That's all it is, going all the way down. It's ego strokes by people who have too much money and not enough things to do with it.
Also in attendance at this dinner party was Robert P. George, 66, a professor of jurisprudence in the chair once held by the now ignominious Woodrow Wilson. I don't know if we talked about Robert P. George on this show, but I'm just going to read you a little bit of Robert P. George. This is from his. This is what he writes about. In coitus, but not in other forms of sexual contact, a man and a woman's bodies coordinate by way of their sexual organs for the common biological purpose of reproduction. They perform the first step of the complex reproductive process. Thus, their bodies become, in a strong sense, one. They are biologically united and do not merely rub together. In coitus, and only in coitus, similarly to the way in which one's heart, lungs, and other organs form a unity, by coordinating for the biological good of the whole. In this case, the whole is made up of the man and woman as a couple, and the biological good of that whole is their reproduction. So this is the guy that a 27-year-old woman is thrilled to let people know she's spending all of her time socializing with. An ancient man obsessed with coitus. Beaver? He has been called the country's most influential conservative thinker for his role in laying the intellectual groundwork for the fights against marriage equality and abortion rights. He founded the James Madison Program in American Ideals and Institutions, where Ms. Gold is a senior research assistant, and where another dinner guest, Bradford Wilson, 71, is an executive director. Okay, I mean, I gotta say, I'm kind of coming around on Solveig because she's getting these mummies around to her house who all are in a position to flatter not just her, ego, but career. And she's getting out the sundress. She's she's whopping those cans out. She's got torpedoes in the water. She's just, basically, she's already married to a guy who's like 55 years old and looks like the actual Dr. Katz. And now she's getting by studs like Robert P. George. She's just giving him a little bit of the old razzle dazzle. And then, wouldn't you know, the New York Times is there to capture every minute of this scintillating dinner party. I mean, could you imagine, like, I don't know, like just like another intellectual clicks, just sort of like lunch date being like being transcribed in this detail?
Right now, I'm imagining a rifle being shoved in my mouth. My brain painting the wall.
Somebody suggested that this piece is like supposed to be dry satire or some bullshit, but just the fact of assuming that anyone would have a bare enough interest in these motherfuckers to make that land is giving them far too much credit, and like just essentially swallowing their version of reality, even if you think you're doing some sort of clever undermining with like understatement or whatever, because no one should know about these people.
I'll just read 2 more paragraphs here. I mean, I know Felix is we're struggling here, but I just want to read this.
He's taking massive damage right now. His hit points are swirling out the fucking drain, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to use meditation to sever my own spine without contact. When a really horny guy that goes to a strip club and comes without contact. I'm trying to end my own life through sheer meditation. I'm trying to make my body just like cut my spinal cord in half before I hear the rest of the story.
Don't give up yet, Felix.
Okay.
At the dinner table, right. Ms. Gold, wearing a checked kitchen apron over her yellow dress, sat at one end and Dr. Katz at the other. Ms. Gold said a swift prayer. Come, Lord Jesus, be our guest, and let these gifts to us be blessed. And the chilled pea soup was
she's
served.
Christian, too. That's awesome.
Dr. Katz previously had a cultural interest in religion, but her faith has rubbed off on him. I don't think he had ever taken seriously the idea of believing in anything until he started dating me, she said. Both of them had published in First Things, a conservative religious journal founded by her godfather, Richard Newhouse.
It's like, I mean, she really thinks a lot of herself, where she's like, yeah, actually, he's really religious now, and I saved his soul. It's not the fact that like I'm like 1/10 his age, and yeah, you got him into Catholicism. There are guys this age who are probably dating 27-year-olds who have gotten into like metalcore for the 27-year-old they married.
You know how we talked about how there's a significant chunk of Americans who would absolutely like positively endorse genocide to protect like going to Cheesecake Factory on a Friday night. There's also a sliver of people who have much more influence and power who willing to do genocide to maintain their fancy little garden parties that are their entire lives. Like her life is this party. It's just a bunch of people humoring her in all of her delusions and never challenging any of them. And she just gets to float through it. And if you take that away from her or people like them, that makes you worthy of death.
Well, Matt, to take that away from her, that's what canceling is.
Yeah.
That's cancel culture. If you take away the tenured positions of her senior citizen husband who fucks his students on a regular basis. I mean,
rich liberals want to have a tea party too. It's the same fucking thing. They're just mirror images of each other.
I would have liked to have known anything except for like the names of these people and like what they do. And it's like, did I need to know like more of these people?
Yeah,
it's just like a fucking endless cycle. There's just always a new fucking asshole who's like, has intellectually crazy dinner parties, and then the 50 people who are like, check this guy out, he's a piece of shit, and it's like, well, like now I know about him.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, now I know about him. Now I can never get him out of my brain unless they invent like the real eternal sunshine surgery where I can forget everyone ever involved in any of this. But no, this is just, it's stuck here forever. It's like when the guy in fucking Tomorrow Never Dies who had the bullet lodged in his brain. The guy who is like the evil version of Nick Denton from Gawker in that James Bond movie.
Says you, Felix, I am going to, as soon as this episode wraps up, going to reenact the last scene from Pi. And that is going to take care of all these people's names. I'm never going to ever think about any of them again.
But wait a second, though. I mean, like, okay, you guys can drill into your skull. You guys can, do some sort of ketamine, LSD, sensory deprivation tank to erase the last half an hour that I've shared with you. I will be trying to get invited to one of Mrs. Solvay's dinner parties because, like, I feel like the disrespect that we're being shown as, like, heterodox, controversial intellectuals is astonishing here.
There's a group of Pakistani conservative intellectuals I know who I think should go to the dinner party.
They would really expose them to some interesting ideas.
I don't even think these people deserve to die. I just like resent knowing about this.
Yeah. How dare you?
Well, forgiveness, please, to my co-hosts and friends here. But we should just start having our own dinner parties. How about that?
Absolutely.
How about that? And we're going to invite all the really dangerous thinkers, that the New York Times looks down their nose at.
Like Dr. Omar.
Mind of Jason, Dan Quinn.
Of course.
Yeah.
Dan Quinn, yes, of course.
Oh, Dan Quinn had a good new video. He could be at this woman's dinner party because he's back to saying the N-word. Not like calling people that. I mean, yeah, calling people that, but like as friends. You know what I mean? I'm glad to see he's upright.
Well, like I said, just like I will host a dinner party for dangerous canceled intellectuals, but I would like respect from the New York Times. I would like a reporter there to document what I serve, what I'm wearing, how my tits look, and which 80-year-old mummy has been canceled for what reason or has been put in jail for whatever intellectual crimes. But I just think we need more respect as dangerous heterodox intellectuals, and I would like dinner party invitations to reflect that fact.
Invite Will to your dinner parties, people.
I can cook.
You're silencing him if you don't.
I'm so sick of being canceled. I really am.
It's a heavy burden.
Well, so there you go. I mean, truly sorry to share the dinner party article with you, but I thought it fit with a theme of just basically everyone the New York Times thinks is sympathetic, interesting, or worthy of their attention at this moment in history where our society is circling the fucking drain.
And they all are united in, yes, helping people indulge the narrative that they have, the most reassuring one possible, that they are going to be fine personally, which they probably will be, and that nothing is their fault or responsibility.
I think that about does it for me this episode. Gentlemen, any concluding thoughts or any house cleaning we need to do at the end of the episode? Just a reminder again for that Portland show, August 4th at the Aladdin Theater. Tickets available now. We'd love to see you in Portland, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be hosting a dinner party for sex.
Yes, it's just going to be a dinner party. You guys get to watch.
All right. Actually, that's a pretty funny idea for the show.
Not terrible.
Sort of like a dinner for idiots, where like everyone brings the worst guests imaginable.
We're all like we bring our most heterodox ideas to the table.
Yeah.
And we just decide to, chop it up without any PC nonsense holding us back.
That's actually a pretty good idea. That's pretty good.
Might do that. We'll think about it.
All right. We should ask Bill Oakley to chef up some of the weird
my God, yes.
That he has from around the world for us.
Yes.
Oh, that'd be really fun. All right. Again, extreme apologies both to Matt and Felix and our listeners for sharing Solvay's dinner party. But it's come and see.
I honestly feel like Will has like a kind of the ring type relationship with these articles, where once he is exposed to them, he has to make everyone else know, or else like it'll come.
Yeah, but in 7 days, I'm fine.
Tomorrow, come through the newspaper and fucking just choke him to death.
I'll forget it in 7 days. Everyone else will be like, their jaw will be twisted into some rictus fucking gaping maw. But I'm doing great.
It's fucked up to do that.
It's the Necronomicon, really. Let's all read from it together. Let's just enter post-humanity together.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to let your body die.
Second dark age.
Yep. Go for it.
Fuck the classics. I'm a dark age person now. We don't need knowledge.
Well,
you won't need eyes where we're going.
Yeah. Perspective in art, gone. There's going to be a 50-foot guy in a building the size of the castle he's in front of a guy who is somehow taller than that building, even though he's in the background. That's what art's going to be like.
Yeah. Your house cat is the same size as your parent. It's great job.
And
great
someone
job.
is
You got an A for that
trying to kill a snail.
All right, gang. Till next time.
Till next time.
Bye-bye.